My name is Ray. Some people still will probably coming in, but we just start, otherwise the program gets a bit full. So thanks for coming here. I'm doing a session about Magento performance related to Mage.coach. So just before I get heads up, I just wanted to check, who's a merchant over here in the room? Okay, nobody. Who's a developer? Okay, mainly everybody. Okay, so well, this is a business session. I would guess definitely some developers over here. So maybe some things will be technical, some notes, but we'll see how far we will go. Mage.coach is a project I created some while back. Just a small history. Been doing Magento now for almost 10 years. And love performance and security over the meanwhile, and while doing development I always wanted to see how fast my website was going, and I created some tools and used some open source tools out there. So while combining all those tools together, I figured out it's like, okay, why not share this with the community? I would guess everybody is doing it because we're using Magento, and that will make sense on doing that. So first of all, I wanted to create something which is possible for everybody. So I created some open source modules. It's on GitHub and it's being shared on a SaaS platform. So everybody can use it on the fly. Even if you're not a developer and a merchant or a shop owner, you can go ahead and see it. And we will see later on how it works. It's built on an open source project called SiteSpeed.io. So reusing the components like Magento also is doing, I created Mage.coach on top of it, focusing mainly on the Magento elements over there. So seeing how it looks and what kind of tools we are using, some elements in there like Google PageSpeed, Selenium, web page tests, and so on and so on. So it's a gathering of all those great tools out there, but then defined with one single point of view to go ahead. And one of the really cool things, and that's the, well, let's say coach part, there's a flexible plugin system. What does it mean? We can create all together. Right now, I and some other enthusiasts are creating some plugins related to open source, but also websites regarding to Magento, how to optimize those elements and to see how the DOM and particular elements could be measured and optimized from there. So why is performance important? Well, I guess everybody's a developer over here, so we can go much quicker through it because everybody is aware of user satisfaction, I would guess. Everybody's aware on search rankings, I would guess. Mobile, I think that's the most important thing that we are currently facing. We got some clients where we see that the majority is already more than 50%. I got one client working on 80% on mobile only. So I would guess if a website is optimized for mobile, and definitely by using those elements, gets you up to speed right away. And last but not least, conversion. Well, I was attending a performance talk this morning. It was really great, thanks for that. And I think mainly the points over here shared are equal. So I think we are on the same pace if we are talking about that. So if that's working, we can continue. Some other related stuff to performance tips. Again, those are being shared in a session this morning, but just to rephrase, minimizing, compression, caching, optimizing, above the fold, redirects, and so on and so on. But one last important thing is once you start working on a project, you always have to keep in mind to monitor your performance. So once you start with a clean project, and I got some really nice slides later on, and definitely regarding to a Magento True project that we started, is once you start with all those fancy new cool tools, start monitoring from the beginning. So you know how your project starts and at how it will end before it goes live. Because if you start worrying about performance later on, it doesn't make sense, because then it's, well, draining all the stuff and fixing it together. And it's going to be much more expensive after all. So monitor your performance. If that's all running, we can see now, and we go a little bit deeper, how the coach, the Magento coach, can help you on getting those pages up and running. So I hope everybody can read it in the back, otherwise I will mention it. From the beginning, we start using the URL, or maybe multiple URLs. Once the URL is, we put it in the queue. From the queue, we check, depending on what you choose, Firefox or Chrome. So right now we've got the latest browsers in the background using, and we want to pull the API structure over there, so the data within the browser, and start recording a video. And from that video, we train all the data itself. We create a screenshot, etc., 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 and we put also the JavaScript data. We pull it from there, and we start analyzing how long it takes to the first pixel to be on the screen from a mobile device, but also on a desktop device, depending also on the bandwidth that you're using. Once that is done, the video is stopped, we close the browser. That's being done in the SaaS platform, and we capture all those metrics together. So all those metrics within the browser that you normally could fetch, we retrieve it in JSON data, and we create an HTML report from that. And that report itself is the bigger sense on how to optimize your website at that part. And right now we had an extra feature built in. The report is being sent to you. You can download it and use it as a later reference on that part. This is a small schema. I would guess who's sitting in the back probably cannot read it, but I will share the slides later on. This is an overview how the system works. So like I mentioned before, we're using particular elements like web page tests, Google page speed, browser time, Slack. Really cool to report some stuff on that. And by using this universe, that's possible to create a report at the end. So there are more and more structures within. So all those open source modules are there, fetched together, bundled in one really nice tool, and which is easy to go by and really easy to use. So don't talk about it anymore. Let's see it in action. I would guess, since I'm on a live environment right now, I prepared some elements offline, so if the Wi-Fi would break, I still got a backup. But the most important thing is, once you start doing your project, go to run.mage.coach. The easiest part is just capture a URL, use your email address in there, and I just collapsed the advanced settings. So as you can see here, we're using Chrome and Firefox. Currently we're using Chrome 60, so almost the latest version. Mainly is that we want to have the most stable version out there, because we are still using the APIs in there, and we want to fetch that data. And once you start storing that data, the data needs to be at the best level, otherwise the data which is sent back doesn't make sense, and there's no way we can report it. Then there's a way to get an optimized setting on the mobile versus desktop. For mobile, we're currently using the iPhone desktop settings. So the iPhone 6, that's the default that we're currently using. From that point on, we can trigger what kind of bandwidth. Let's put it this way, this is symbolized. So this is not officially the bandwidth that we're being using, but it's being optimized on the server. So while running some tests, I did some tests on a physical device, and honestly speaking, there's a small difference, but it's a good reference if we want to see what's going out there, and depending on what kind of clients and what kind of bandwidths are there. The amount of runs, every URL which is being fetched normally is being scanned once, but you can imagine if a website is not being cached in the browser, it's really slow. So that's why I created an option to at least create 3 runs, so every page is being scanned twice. From that point on, we have an extra functionality, the depth level. What does it mean? Once we start fetching the home page, and you can choose whatever page out there, and we can create multiple levels, it fetches the page within the URL structure. So let's say you got a menu, and within that menu you got some categories or products. It automatically fetches the URLs underneath, so you don't have to add every URL once again. So one URL could do a whole bunch all at once. So it's like a Google crawler, but then made easy. So let's say I put this also to 3, and then currently I'm able to scan all 1, all 5, or 10 pages. I'm using a development environment where it's possible already to scan 100 pages, but believe me, once I did that for a project, it takes 2.5 hours to do 100 pages 3 times, including all those depth together, but it's also creating, for every scan, it's creating a video, and we will see that later on. It's a physical video which is being created. Once I start this, and I will do this in the back, let's put it this way, starts, well, having some animations. What a penguin. While this is running, I will share you the outcome. This is a project that we are working on currently. It's running on the Magento Cloud Edition, but then based on community. So it's not officially Magento Cloud, but it's Platform SH with a community version on it. It's still possible to do that. And while running this, and this is a way back, we created this outcome, and this is being tested, like I mentioned, with 100 pages. So currently, this is a solid performance. And the most important figures out there are the RUM, and that's not a drink. RUM stands for Real User Monitoring. And the speed index reference to a Google related stuff where the visual onload events, so the time the first pixel kicks in and starts painting the website within your browser, that metric is an official metric by Google. The lower the number, the better the quality, because once the visualization starts, it calculates the algorithm and builds the screen from there. And the last score, that's the score based within our system. It's a reference between Google's page speed and the plugin system built within Coach. So the higher the number, you would guess, the better the overview is. So from that point on, we see we got 104 pages analyzed. That took 2.5 hours. And we see this is a dashboard, an overview dashboard, where I'm using Chrome and I'm using 3 runs on a desktop environment. And the overall score over here, including the performance score, the usability score, the best practices score, and so on and so on. What we've done, besides just performance monitoring, we wanted to see also some best practices, how large the thumbnails would be on a mobile device, how much room is there, what kind of elements are being used, also on an SEO perspective. So there's much more, that's why it's Coach. It's not only performance driven, but it's got much more functionality in there to help you, well, optimize your website by itself. So I'm not going through all the metrics because there's a lot to cover still. I got a detailed summary overview, and I hope it's readable at the end. Otherwise, well, again, this will be shared and you can run it yourself. Over here, we got an overview of all some scans that we've done, and kind of nice. Even we as a developer found some bugs in there related to 500 errors or 400 errors. If there's a broken link within your system, while using this system, we can automatically fetch whatever development is going on, and of all URLs are being, well, created at the right response. There's a medium response and a maximum response, so depending on all the 100 pages that we scanned, we have the minimum, let's say the Coach score is 68, and the maximum is 91. So that's a really good average on both of them. But the most important thing is this page. It's called Pages, and within Pages, we've scanned by just this single URL, and it scanned all the URLs underneath the system. Currently, it's randomized, so depending on how the crawler uses it, it starts rendering all the pages. And from there on, we will see what kind of pages are being optimized. The URL on the left-hand side, then we've got the amount of data, so how heavy is that page. And the easiest part is, right away, we see, depending if I'm clicking on the total size, what the largest page is. And the largest page over here is almost 2.5 megabytes. And the smallest one is 1 megabyte. So we can see how quickly what's going on with the pages, the amount of requests, the visual changes, the page speed, and that's the number that I just shared before. The last change, so the last pixel kicking in on this Magento 2 project. And imagine this page over here, the last one over here, has 6.2 seconds. It's kind of slow, honestly. But we get a good overview. And the next column, and this is kind of neat, we were just mentioning Google's page speed and also the presentation that we did before. We use the Google PageSpeed API to fetch by every URL the data and retrieve that with an JSON data array and post it over here. So we can automatically see the data all together. So right now we got 2 pages doing 100. That's kind of cool. But the slowest one is 75. So all at once we see multiple pages together. With Google PageSpeed Insight, it's not possible to do multiple pages once together. Now with Mage.coach, it's really easy to get a good overview on that one. And with the performance score itself, it's the same. So this is just an overview again, but let's go a little bit deeper. Let's grab the home page, and now the fun starts, because now within this single page we get more detailed elements on what's going on with that page. So we see the runs. We can click on the different runs and see what the difference are within. If I'm checking the first run, again, there's an overview of this page, and I got also a waterfall. And like again, I saw this really nice in the session before. The waterfall really helps you as a developer, but also a business perspective, to see how quick it is. The first data kicking in took 444 milliseconds on the first run. Let's do a quick check on the second run. We see that it's 272. So we see that the second one, because it was not cached, the first hit, and we see in the second cache that it's already quicker. So the server, and this one is using Magento 2, using Varnish, is kicking in, and the Varnish cache is being used. So from the data, we see, depending on what's going on, where, and this is really hard to read in the back, even in the front, which all metrics are being used and how long does it take to start painting that first pixel, because that's what it's all about. And imagine if this is desktop, if you're going to use it for mobile or use it in a different bandwidth, it really depends on what kind of data is being sent to the browser, and the user starts using it. The coach element, the plugin system that we just mentioned, is an overview on a whole set of tools. This is unlimited, and this is plugin based, and currently I'm starting writing some really nice plugins that I want to share as quickly as possible on how to optimize your website. But even from a user perspective, if you're not aware on those performance needs, you can even use the coach if my alt text or my title text, or if the alt text is too long or too short. So there are also accessibilities, performance advice, and all the advice are being split up on all levels. So this looks a little bit similar than the Google PageSpeed, but goes much more detailed on a lot of levels. And also, and this is a really nice performance tips for you, developers out there, start using DNS prefetch, pre-connect, prefetch, and rendering. Those are some new terms. I'm not going into that deeper, but those are really beneficial if you want to optimize your Magento environment as soon as possible. So within browser time, and like I mentioned before, we got a video option. So again, from every page which is created out there, there's a video created. And within that video, automatically the timings which are being fetched through the browser are being posted in that video. And maybe when I got some time left, I did some combinations, because right now I got a really nice combination tool where I can put two videos, let's say a mobile and a desktop, next to each other, and I can see the difference. And I can see if my mobile version is better than my desktop version or vice versa. So it's really cool to see a visualized optimization on how the page would look like and how I could optimize that. A little bit more hardcore for some nerds over here. Those are the X-ray data from the HTML, CSS, JavaScript images, and how much data is being transferred or being cached or so on, including our third-party development URLs in there. This is a small overview of all those third-party URLs. So you can imagine this website is almost a productionized website. So there's a lot of marketing stuff in there. And all those marketing stuff, and you can imagine if a call needs to be mentioned to, let's say, Google, and it's having a heavy payload on SSL, I can easily now see which payload it is, and even if it would be possible to optimize that data. I got a top list over here, and this is personally one of the quickest advantages of using the coach. using a project and seeing the top 10 on need to optimize pages from a JavaScript perspective, images perspective, CSS perspective, and HTML perspective. And also, what are the slowest resources? Like I mentioned, all those assets together, now we see there's a CSS file being shared at a max CDN, and that's using a lot of time to kick in. So this is decreasing our speeds as a performance issue. So from a user perspective, I would imagine this is not something that we want to have live, because that's blocking our rendering at once. And it's mainly sometimes the assets which are well, terrible to optimize, because that's not something that's been running on the server itself. So make sure once you start using third-party assets that does it make sense. So this is a really, again, small overview. While we start this session, I did a really small website that I created. Officially, it's not a Magento website, so bear with me. But just to give you an overview, if you optimize a website on a really high level, it's possible to get a 5-star rating. The highest is a 6-star. And then you also see that the score is 49 and the RUM speed is a little bit above 500. So the lower the RUM, the higher the score, the better performance optimization could gain. So what's next? We wanted to start working on more and more plugins. Definitely for Magento 2, still also some Magento 1 in there, but the more plugins we have, the better it is, and the better developers out there can start working by just clicking in the URL and getting an easy report. Well, maybe similar like Mage report. That's on security, and this is based on performance to help you developers out there to gain more perspective on the quality of your website. And the most important thing, it's about the customer. The better the customer has their website, the more conversion they can run, and we as developers probably can create more code, and that's kind of cool. So there's also a premium version that we want to start working on with some partners. Like I mentioned, it takes 2.5 hours to run 100 URLs. There's only one queue at this point, so if the queue adds up and everybody starts scanning right now, you can imagine that the queue will, and that's why we've got this email address, so you don't have to wait. It will be sent automatically to your email account, and then the whole pages are being shared offline. So you can use it locally and scan it, whatever project, on whatever phase you're in there. Some advanced reporting, maybe a private hosting solution on there. Currently, I'm doing the top 10 Google most viewed pages in there. So there's a small side project that I'm working on. Because if you want to scan the most important pages, there's a rule in there, like a top 80-20 rule. If you optimize the top 10 pages on your website being measured in Google by that month, and you optimize, it helps you to set 80% already for the quality rate for all the rest of the pages, because there's already a home page in there, a category page, a product page, a checkout page, and so on. So if you optimize the 10 most viewed pages, you're on a roll, and that's really easy to go by and do that every month. If you want to go in a little bit deeper and you start running your metrics on a regular basis, and we are doing this internally right now on our Magento 2 project. And this is the staging environment that I just showed. But now the dashboard is being created in Grafana. There's a dashboard tool we see, and this is kind of cool, that once we start merging and getting all the figures together, we see that our release that we wanted to rule pays off. Because now we see that all the metrics, and this is being scanned every hour. So this development environment scans every hour, and while our developers push their code at the end of the day, we could see, let's say at 6 or 7 o'clock during the night, what happens. And next morning, once they start working again, they see if the code that they push would make sense. So this is a small overview where the backend versus the front-end time kicks in, and how much load is being saved on this almost production-ready environment. This is a slide where the slide increases. So if something went wrong, that's also possible. You can see automatically where the site is getting heavier, and maybe you have to do some optimizations in that part. So it gets you much more through the whole schema on what's going on in the pre-production environment. And right now we've set the tool in Docker, which is scanning every hour. Multiple pages, so it can be randomized all multiple pages, and sharing all the data in a really easy to go Grafana view. Even responses like 500 error codes or 404 codes are being noticed in this dashboard. So there's a broader scale, so you don't have to run it manually anymore because everything is being optimized, and you just need to be aware of the graphics in there. So some takeaways at the end. Run Mage.coach before, after, and compare every release. It really helps. Lower numbers on the rum, not the drink. High score at the regular elements. And please don't forget mobile. I would say if a mobile website is optimized, and maybe start from there, the rest will follow. For now, because I think we're almost at the breach, are there any questions? No? Okay, thanks. For those out there liking it, please let me know. I got some stickers for your people out there. And just some thanks to some help out there within the community. Some people that created the logo and some stuff behind it. So thanks for them, and you can see on Twitter or Facebook, Instagram, or even the code on GitHub. It's available over there. That's me. I'm Ray. Thanks for having me, and I hope you like it. If there's any questions, I'm still walking around. Thanks.